He humiliated her in front of everyone, chose his ex-fiancée to marry. But what he didn't know, she was already secretly desired by a powerful billionaire. When the truth comes out, who will truly lose everything? Stay until the end to find out how this secret billionaire will change everything. And if you enjoy stories full of unexpected romances, betrayals, and twists, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next story. Ethan Lin had always been seen as an unattainable man. President of an empire built with discipline and coldness, his public image was impeccable, and his every move seemed calculated to impress. On a clear spring morning, he summoned the press to a luxurious press conference at a five-star hotel, something that already had everyone in suspense. The camera flashes reflected off the shine of his impeccable suit, while his stern expression maintained an air of mystery. People whispered, speculating whether it would be a new billion-dollar investment or an unexpected merger. But no one was prepared for the news that would completely change the narrative of his personal and professional life. When Ethan took the microphone, the room fell silent immediately. He took a deep breath, as if he wanted every word to echo in the memory of everyone present. Then, with the same calmness with which he closed million-dollar deals, he announced his engagement to Claire Quinn, daughter of a billionaire family known for its social and political influence. The shock was instantaneous, with journalists exchanging surprised glances. Claire was not by his side, but her absence seemed calculated, part of a bigger show. It was the kind of news that shook the market, social circles, and especially those who knew the true coldness hidden behind his smile. The announcement wasn't just about love or union. To many, it sounded like a power play. Claire came from a lineage marked by tradition and wealth, and her union with Ethan meant much more than just a simple marriage. It was an alliance between two empires, a silent pact that could further strengthen both of their positions in the corporate world. And while journalists tried to digest the news, Ethan kept his gaze fixed, conveying confidence but hiding layers of undisclosed intentions. It was clear that this was not just about romance, there was something more behind this decision. The repercussions were immediate. Gossip sites, business columns, and even online forums exploded with speculation. Some celebrated the couple as the new symbol of glamour and power, while others questioned whether there were any real feelings involved. After all, Ethan rarely showed genuine emotions in public. For him, relationships always seemed like an extension of his business strategy. And in this case, the perfect timing of the announcement raised even more suspicion. Behind the glitz and praise, a cloud of mistrust began to form. The most curious thing was that, even without appearing, Claire became the center of attention. People analyzed her life, her choices, and even her supposed insecurities. The simple fact that she was not present at the event created an intriguing void. This further fueled the feeling that there was something hidden, something that was not being told. It was as if her silence itself was a character in that narrative carefully crafted by Ethan. And in this game of appearances, the public was already beginning to wonder who was really in control. Meanwhile, among the company's employees, the mood was one of shock. Many knew that Ethan had a close, albeit emotionally distant, relationship with his secretary, Sophie Jiang. She had been by his side for 5 years, accompanying every decision, every late night at work, and every victory. To some, it seemed inevitable that Ethan would choose her, as her loyalty was evident. The announcement with Claire not only surprised them, but also raised internal questions. After all, how would Sophie have reacted to hearing that all her efforts would never be recognized beyond the office walls? For Sophie, hearing the news wasn't just a surprise, it was like feeling the ground open up beneath her feet. Even though Ethan had never made any clear statements, she believed that their connection went beyond the professional hierarchy. The public announcement exposed her to a harsh reality. Ethan saw her only as a disposable piece on his chessboard. And even though she didn't have the courage to show it in public, something inside her broke silently. While the world celebrated, Sophie plunged into a heavy silence, swallowing feelings that no one could ever imagine. This moment marked the beginning of a new phase. Not only for Ethan and Claire, who were now the targets of headlines and speculation, but also for Sophie, who was beginning to realize that her life could no longer revolve around someone who never truly saw her. The news was not just about an engagement, it was a cruel reminder that, in environments dominated by power and status, hearts are often left behind. The glitz of the announcement hid the first cracks in a story that was far from perfect. And even though everyone thought they had seen the whole show that morning, no one had any idea what was about to unfold behind the scenes. Because behind the cameras, far from the gossip columns, there were secrets that even the most attentive could not have predicted. And the announcement that seemed like the climax of the story was, in fact, only the first step towards something much bigger, but the worst was yet to come. Sophie Jiang always believed that loyalty and dedication could build something real. For 5 years, she stood by Ethan Lin's side, accompanying him to every meeting, every decision, and every sleepless night. She knew his moods, his demands, and even the secrets he kept under lock and key. Every task completed, every document reviewed, every detail handled with precision was a way of showing care. But that morning, after the announcement of his engagement to Claire, brought a bitter feeling. All her efforts seemed invisible, as if they had never really mattered. Her loyalty had been forgotten, unceremoniously erased, as if it had never existed. Sophie's silence in the office that day was heavy. Colleagues tried in vain to offer words of comfort, but she felt isolated in a world she herself had helped to build. Every forced smile, every polite greeting, hid the frustration growing inside her. She remembered small moments, discreet gestures of appreciation that Ethan rarely made, and understood that perhaps she had been mistaken all those years. The feeling of being just a shadow beside someone who controlled so much of her destiny began to crystallize with painful clarity. Sophie spent years watching Ethan closely, learning from his every move and anticipating his every decision. She was there when he seemed invincible and also in the moments when his vulnerability showed itself discreetly. But she had never received true recognition, not for her work, nor for the time she devoted, nor for the silent feelings she nurtured. And realizing this now, when he was announcing another love, was as if all those years of effort had been absorbed by an invisible darkness. The realization sank in slowly, but with enough weight to change everything inside her. She understood that loyalty was not a bargaining chip in Ethan's world, it was just a silent expectation, something he took for granted. Every night of extra work, every decision made to protect his interests, every piece of unsolicited advice had been ignored. And most painful of all, the recognition she had hoped for would never come. Reality seemed cruel, but it could no longer be ignored. Sophie began to relive specific moments, remembering occasions when she could have been valued, but never was. Her small victories were always credited to him, as if her presence were merely an extension of his success. Every detail, every personal achievement, mingled with the feeling of invisibility that now consumed her. She wondered how many people lived like this, silently, working with passion and dedication, but forgotten the moment another story caught the spotlight. The weight of disappointment was palpable. Sophie realized she could no longer depend on someone who never saw her beyond her professional usefulness. The recognition she so desired was beyond Ethan's reach, and perhaps always had been. The realization brought with it a mixture of sadness and liberation, sadness for all that was lost, and liberation for finally seeing the truth. She no longer needed to live in the shadow of someone who did not value her heart and her efforts. As the days passed, Sophie began to feel a subtle, almost imperceptible change. The emptiness left by Ethan's lack of appreciation slowly turned into fuel. Each task she completed, now without expectations, was a silent affirmation of her own strength. The world seemed bigger, full of possibilities she had never dared to explore while she believed her place was only by his side. And this silent awakening began to paint new paths ahead of her. She also realized that her feelings had never been a burden, but a force that could be directed towards something greater. Unrequited love and ignored loyalty had not broken her, on the contrary, they had ignited a sense of independence and determination. Sophie felt she was ready to turn the page, but there was still an invisible obstacle, the legacy of years of dedication and the echo of memories that tied her to the past. She needed to turn all of this into something positive before she could move on. And as she watched Ethan from afar, celebrating his own life and his engagement to Claire, Sophie understood a truth that was both painful and liberating. It wasn't about deserving recognition, it was about recognizing herself before anyone else. Little did she know that this realization would be the first step in a transformation that would completely change the course of her life. The office was quiet that day, except for the sound of Ethan Lin's footsteps echoing across the marble floor. Sophie Jiang felt every beat of her heart as if it were audible to everyone around her. She knew something was about to change, but she wasn't prepared for the weight that lay ahead. For 5 years, she had devoted herself unreservedly, often sacrificing sleep and weekends to ensure that everything was perfect. Every document reviewed, every meeting organized, every invisible detail was the result of her quiet loyalty. But Ethan, cold and calculating, seemed unable to truly see any of it. When he finally called Sophie into the room, the air seemed thicker than ever. She entered with her back straight, trying to maintain her composure, but a tinge of anxiety tightened her chest. Ethan did not look directly at her. His words came as a cold, professional message, dry and direct. He announced that her contract had come to an end. There were no compliments, no recognition, not even a thank you for the time and effort she had put in. The coldness of his tone was like an invisible blade, cutting away any trace of security or hope that remained. Sophie felt a lump form in her throat. All the years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, decisions made to protect Ethan's reputation and his company, now seemed to vanish in seconds. It wasn't just the end of her job, it was the realization that her feelings, her dedication, and her presence had never truly been valued. And as she listened to his parting words, she realized she was facing an emotional abyss she never imagined she would have to face. Even with his coldness, Sophie maintained a calm facade, taking deep breaths to keep the tears from escaping. Each step she took toward the door seemed heavier than the last, as if the floor was trying to hold her back. She thought about everything she had sacrificed, all the time she had put Ethan's and the company's needs ahead of her own. A feeling of injustice overwhelmed her, mixed with the realization that she would never be seen in the way she deserved. The reality was harsh, but necessary for her to understand her worth. As she walked through the corridors, her colleagues' glances mingled with pity and surprise. Some knew about the intensity of the silent bond between Sophie and Ethan, but no one expected such a cold decision. To them, it was clear that she carried more than just administrative duties. She carried years of dedication and knowledge that underpinned part of Ethan's empire. And yet, it was all discarded as if it were old paper, without weight or importance. The injustice was visible to everyone except Ethan himself. Sophie paused for a moment, looking out at the city through the top-floor window. The evening light reflected off the glass buildings, and something inside her began to change. The pain and frustration were still there, but a spark of determination began to emerge. She realized that this moment would not only be about loss, it would be the beginning of something new, something she could control. Ethan's coldness, which had once seemed overwhelming, now became an impetus for her to seek her own worth. What seemed like an absolute end, Sophie began to see as an opportunity. She understood that, even though she had been rejected, her experience and skills remained intact, ready to be applied anywhere that recognized her potential. Ethan's decision, though cruel, revealed something essential, the power to turn rejection into strength. She didn't need his approval or belated recognition. True validation came from herself, and that was what began to shape her next step. As she packed her things, each item removed from the table seemed to symbolize a closed chapter. The years of dedication were not forgotten, but now they would belong only to her, to be used strategically and intelligently. Sophie took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of loss and freedom. And even with a heavy heart, a firm thought emerged. If Ethan didn't value her, someone else would surely see her true strength. And that silent realization was just the beginning of a turnaround he could never have imagined. As she walked through the building's lobby for the last time as Ethan's employee, Sophie felt a mixture of pain, anger, and determination. The world outside seemed bigger and more promising, even though she still didn't know exactly how she would use her skills. One thing was clear: none of this could erase her. And as the door closed behind her, Sophie knew that life was about to turn a decisive page, and that the game of power and recognition was just beginning. Sophie had barely caught her breath after leaving Ethan's building when she received an unexpected phone call. On the other end of the line, a firm and confident voice called her by name, praising her professionalism and reputation. It was Nathan Blake, a billionaire businessman known for turning small opportunities into lucrative empires. He had been following her career closely, admiring her competence and determination, which few others had noticed. The proposal was clear: a leadership position with strategic responsibilities and a salary that exceeded all expectations. Upon hearing the offer, Sophie felt a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Someone was willing to recognize her true value without requiring her to hide or sacrifice her dignity. Nathan emphasized that her talent could not be ignored, and that he saw her not only as an employee, but as a partner capable of contributing decisively to the growth of his business. For the first time, Sophie felt that her efforts would be valued fairly and genuinely. The difference in treatment was so clear that it seemed almost surreal. She hesitated for a moment, thinking about what she would leave behind, but the weight of years of contempt made her see the opportunity in a different light. Here was someone who offered more than money. He offered respect, recognition, and room to grow. Nathan not only understood her value, but was willing to invest in it without reservation. Every word he said reinforced that her painful past with Ethan did not have to define her future. It was the kind of chance that rarely comes along, and Sophie felt a spark of hope ignite. As she talked to Nathan, Sophie noticed the stark contrast between the two men. Ethan had shown coldness and indifference, valuing only immediate results. Nathan, on the other hand, saw Sophie's potential as something greater, something that could transform not only businesses but lives. This realization opened her eyes to the power of being recognized by someone who truly understood her value. And although the invitation was tempting, she knew that the decision would require courage and conviction. The offer wasn't just a job, it was an invitation to reinvent her career. Nathan offered autonomy, a voice in decisions, and access to projects that could define the future of the entire company. He wanted Sophie by his side as someone essential, not as a replaceable piece. And to reinforce the seriousness of the invitation, he mentioned that her salary would be significantly higher than what Ethan could offer under any circumstances. It was proof that true recognition cannot be bought, but is earned through respect and strategic vision. Sophie felt a wave of emotion that mixed relief and determination. For the first time in years, someone saw her as more than just a functional role. They saw her as a leader, someone capable of making decisions, inspiring teams, and transforming results. Nathan had broken the invisible barrier that Ethan had never bothered to cross. It was as if, suddenly, the doors to the world she had always dreamed of had opened before her, inviting her to enter and take her rightful place. As she mentally analyzed the proposal, Sophie realized that she had learned valuable lessons from her previous bitter experience. She knew that recognition is not something you beg for, it is something you earn by being true to yourself. Nathan was not only offering money, but trust, opportunity, and real growth. All of this contrasted with the void left by Ethan. And although the path ahead required courage, Sophie felt that she could finally choose for herself, without depending on anyone else's validation. The final meeting with Nathan cemented all of this. He conveyed seriousness, intelligence, and empathy, a rare combination in the business world. Every word of encouragement, every gesture of trust, reinforced that Sophie was not just starting a new job, she was embarking on a new chapter in her life. And as she mentally accepted the invitation, something inside her grew stronger, the certainty that her value was non-negotiable and that she would finally be recognized as she deserved. As she left Nathan's office, Sophie felt that a new door was opening, bringing with it possibilities that had previously seemed distant or impossible. The weight of rejection and frustration began to transform into momentum, energy to achieve something much greater. She knew the path would not be easy, but now she was alongside someone who valued her talent and vision. And as she walked toward the street lit by the evening sun, Sophie was certain that her life was about to change forever. When Ethan discovered that Sophie had accepted Nathan Blake's offer, his usually controlled world shook. He couldn't imagine that anyone could see her value so clearly and recognize her so fairly. For the first time, Ethan felt the pang of what it meant to lose someone who had always been by his side. He had underestimated the importance of his secretary, not only as a professional, but as someone who understood his every move, every silent decision. Desperate, Ethan sought her out in person, trying to hide his embarrassment beneath his usual confidence. With a steady voice, he began to offer impressive figures, numbers that could seduce any rational person. Millions, generous bonuses, promises of rapid advancement, all to try to convince her to return. He used every argument possible, trying to remind her of the past, of the endless nights of work and the silent relationship they had maintained. But Sophie looked at him calmly, her heart now shielded by experience and clarity. Sophie knew this was a test, but she wasn't willing to give in. The money Ethan was offering could buy anything except respect and dignity. She remembered every sacrifice she had made, every gesture ignored, every night she had been cast aside for the sake of convenience or strategy. Ethan finally realized her value, but it was too late. And that hurt in a way words couldn't express. Her newfound sense of power and independence kept her strong. As Ethan spoke, she stood tall, responding calmly and firmly. "I appreciate everything," Sophie said, carefully choosing each word, "but some things money can't buy." It was a silent declaration that her worth was not for sale, and that her loyalty and dignity were non-negotiable. She was not just refusing a financial offer, she was affirming to herself that she finally saw herself as someone complete, worthy of respect and recognition. Ethan's frustration was palpable. He had controlled so many aspects of her life, shaped decisions, and achieved results, but now he was faced with something that no amount of money could manipulate: Sophie's autonomy and courage. He never imagined that she could, or would, say no. Each attempt to convince her only reinforced the silent strength growing within her, the certainty that she didn't need him to forge her own path. Sophie felt a mixture of compassion and detachment as she listened to Ethan insist. She remembered all the times she had been by his side, offering support and dedication, and understood that her time of waiting for recognition was over. The choice was now clear: follow someone who finally saw her value, or return to the past where her presence was underestimated. Every second of that encounter reinforced her conviction that dignity was worth more than any amount of money. Nathan Blake, though distant at that moment, represented everything Ethan had never offered her: trust, opportunity, and genuine respect. Sophie knew that accepting Ethan would mean going back to being invisible, ignored, and underestimated. Refusing the money was also a way of asserting her autonomy, of saying that she would now determine her own worth and destiny. And, deep down, it reinforced the lesson she had learned: some losses are necessary to discover true strength. As Ethan finally fell silent, Sophie felt a mixture of sadness for the past and excitement for the future. She had turned a page, and each decision strengthened her. It wasn't just about money or status, it was about self-respect and the certainty that she could reinvent herself and thrive without depending on someone who didn't see her. That moment cemented something that would become central to her life: dignity above all else. As she walked away from Ethan, Sophie felt something inside her change forever. The rejection and frustration of the past turned into an impulse to grow even more, to learn and to conquer. The feeling of freedom was overwhelming, and she knew that no one could underestimate her anymore. And as she walked toward a future where she would finally be recognized for her worth, Sophie prepared herself for even greater challenges. As soon as Sophie joined Nathan Blake's team, something inside her awakened. For the first time in years, she felt that every decision, every insight, and every effort would be valued. Nathan treated her as a partner, not just an employee. Every meeting was an opportunity to showcase her vision, every project was a stage for her intelligence and strategic ability. The respect she had never received from Ethan now came naturally, almost like oxygen filling every space of her newfound confidence. Sophie quickly realized that her skills went far beyond basic administration. She read negotiations like chess games, anticipating moves and identifying opportunities that few others noticed. The team began to trust her intuition and analysis, consulting her before crucial decisions. Each victory, each contract signed, was a reminder that she had never been underestimated, she had just never found a leader who knew how to recognize her true value. As Nathan watched, he was impressed by Sophie's ability to transform complex data into clear and effective strategies. She was able to identify risks and solutions before others even noticed them. Her influence grew organically, without the need for self-promotion or manipulation. With each success, Sophie felt a mixture of satisfaction and empowerment, realizing that her dedication and intelligence were finally being used in the right way, with people who truly appreciated her talent. Her colleagues, who initially saw her as the newcomer, began to treat her with genuine respect. That aura of confidence and competence made her an immediate reference point. Every strategic decision Sophie was involved in turned into concrete and visible results, consolidating her position as a key member of the team. She was no longer just another executive, she was a recognized leader, someone whose judgment and vision were essential to the company's success. As she took on greater responsibilities, Sophie also discovered an inner strength she never knew she had. The feeling of being valued made every challenge seem like an opportunity for growth. Each successful negotiation motivated her to improve even more, explore uncharted territory, and cement her reputation as an indispensable professional. Nathan watched with satisfaction, knowing he had found someone who could take his company to new heights. Sophie not only led with intelligence, but also with empathy. She knew how to listen, guide, and motivate her team, turning each project into a collaborative experience. This balance between strategy and humanity set her apart, making her indispensable not only for financial results, but also for the company's culture. Each step she took reinforced her self-confidence, showing that true leadership goes far beyond titles or numbers. The intense pace of work did not intimidate Sophie, on the contrary, it stimulated her creativity and problem-solving skills. She quickly learned to balance multiple projects, complex negotiations, and high expectations. The team began to rely on her for critical decisions, and each victory further cemented her central role. The respect she earned was not only professional but also personal, a validation that her dedication and talent were finally finding genuine recognition. As Nathan entrusted Sophie with more and more responsibilities, she began to realize the true extent of her own influence. Every decision made, every contract signed, and every successful negotiation reflected not only competence, but growth and autonomy. She was no longer just a former secretary, she was a strategic leader, someone who shaped results and turned challenges into opportunities. The feeling of true power was rewarding, but it also carried with it the responsibility to remain steadfast and strategic. And as she looked at the success reports and ongoing projects, Sophie knew that her life had changed forever. Every challenge she faced, every decision she made, brought her closer to a level Ethan could never imagine. She had gained not only recognition, but freedom and respect. And although she was just beginning to write this new chapter, one thing was clear: the next steps would be decisive. The news about the dispute for control of Lifang Enterprises hit the corporate world like a silent bomb. Sophie, now a key member of Nathan Blake's team, immediately realized that her skills would be tested in ways she had never imagined before. It wasn't just about strategies and numbers, but about influence, quick decisions, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Every move had enormous consequences, and Sophie knew that any mistake could cost more than a contract. It could cost reputation, power, and trust. While behind the scenes the company was abuzz with secret alliances and discreet negotiations, Sophie stood her ground. She led complex meetings, presented proposals, and anticipated the opposition's moves. Every decision was calculated, but it conveyed confidence and leadership. Colleagues and adversaries began to realize that she was not only an efficient strategist, but someone capable of maintaining integrity and calm, even when everyone around her panicked or gave in to greed. The first official meeting with representatives from the other side was intense. Sophie presented data, projections, and creative solutions that balanced risk and return. Her confidence shone through in every gesture, every word, every meticulous analysis. Nathan watched with admiration, knowing he had found someone capable of handling not only strategic projects, but also all the emotional and political tension of a complex corporate dispute. Sophie was becoming a leader, earning respect both inside and outside the company. As days turned into weeks, the dispute intensified. With each meeting, the pressure increased, and Sophie needed to balance assertiveness and diplomacy. She began to notice that her ability to anticipate moves and identify strategic vulnerabilities was crucial. Colleagues who had previously seen her only as a promising talent now depended on her insight to make critical decisions. Each success reinforced the perception that Sophie was not only competent, she was essential. Sophie also realized that corporate warfare wasn't just about money or control, it was about reputations, alliances, and trust. Every misstep could be exploited, every word could be used against her. And despite the mounting pressure, she maintained the clarity and focus that made her indispensable. Nathan trusted her completely, and that further strengthened her position. She knew that true leadership required courage, intelligence, and long-term vision, and she was ready to prove it to everyone. The challenges began to reveal not only Sophie's strategic talent, but also her emotional resilience. Every difficult negotiation, every tense meeting, showed that she not only understood numbers and contracts, but also people. Her ability to handle conflict, mediate interests, and keep the team united under pressure set her apart as a rare leader. The strength of character she had cultivated during years of unrecognized dedication now became her greatest weapon. As she advanced in the dispute, Sophie discovered unexpected allies within the company. People who had previously been neutral began to support her ideas, recognizing not only her intelligence but also her integrity. Each achievement, each correct decision, consolidated her position and increased Nathan's confidence. Her strength was not only tactical, but moral, a presence that inspired respect and collaboration, showing that true power comes from competence and character, not just titles. Even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, Sophie did not waver. With each obstacle, she found intelligent solutions, balancing assertiveness and strategy, remaining calm while others despaired. The tension increased with each passing day, but the way she conducted the process generated admiration and confidence in everyone around her. Sophie became a name impossible to ignore in the corporate world, a benchmark for firm and strategic leadership, capable of turning a crisis into an opportunity. And while the outcome of the dispute was still far off, Sophie felt that her growth was just the beginning. Each victory, each challenge overcome, strengthened not only her career, but her self-confidence and vision for the future. She had earned respect and authority, but she knew that her next moves would be decisive in consolidating her power. And even though she was in control, something bigger was about to emerge, putting everything she had achieved to the test. Ethan watched from afar as Sophie consolidated her leadership role in Nathan's team. Her every move, every successful decision, seemed to echo directly in his conscience, awakening a feeling of emptiness that he couldn't ignore. For the first time, he realized the true impact of his loss. She wasn't just a secretary he had dismissed, but someone who knew his weaknesses, anticipated his moves, and always kept him safe in silence. Frustration and wounded pride mingled painfully. Ethan never imagined that Sophie would become indispensable elsewhere so quickly. The weight of every contract signed, every successful negotiation, fell on him like a cruel reminder of his own blindness. He had underestimated her quiet influence, ignoring that competence and loyalty together are powerful forces. Now, each of Sophie's victories was also a reminder of what he had lost. As he watched Lifang Enterprises' results roll in, Ethan felt a pang of regret mixed with anger and sadness. He realized that he had never truly appreciated someone who not only understood his work but also protected him from his own mistakes. Sophie had been more than efficient. She had been strategic, loyal, and wise, and he had never offered her the same recognition. This realization hit him hard, making him aware that time could not be reversed. Ethan tried to rationalize it, reminding himself of the success and status he had always sought. But every decision Sophie made, every step in her new career, made it clear that he had lost something that no amount of money or power could replace. The realization of the void left him restless, wondering if he would ever regain the trust and dedication that had once been guaranteed. He had lost not only tangible results, but also the silent partnership that had shaped much of his success. The following days were marked by growing tension. Ethan began to discreetly monitor Sophie's every move, trying to understand how she had become so influential and respected in such a short time. Every report, every news item about successful negotiations, increased his sense of helplessness. He felt that his former secretary had become an unbeatable force, someone he could no longer control, predict, or underestimate. As he reflected, Ethan realized the magnitude of his mistake. It wasn't just about losing a talented employee, it was about losing someone who understood his world better than anyone else. Sophie had been, without realizing it, the invisible pillar of his career, someone who kept everything balanced while he focused on results and figures. This belated realization of her value brought a mixture of deep regret and silent unease. With every meeting or report Nathan successfully shared, Ethan felt his own position threatened. He began to realize that Sophie's absence was not only a personal loss, but a strategic one. Her influence, ability, and vision were now being used elsewhere, benefiting someone who recognized and valued her strength. Frustration grew along with the realization that he could never replace or replicate what Sophie offered. Even in the face of despair, Ethan tried to maintain his composure in public, but inside, the reality was clear and painful. He had lost someone irreplaceable, someone whose intelligence and loyalty silently protected him as he made decisions, blindly trusting in her dedication. Now, each of Sophie's successes represented not only a victory for Nathan, but also a constant reminder of everything he had lost through negligence. And as he watched Sophie reach new heights of influence and respect, Ethan felt that, although he still had resources and power, he could never regain what she represented. The realization of his own blindness mixed wounded pride with deep regret. He finally understood that money and status could not replace loyalty and genuine partnership, and that by underestimating Sophie, he had lost something that could never be bought. With Nathan by her side, Sophie began to realize how much she had evolved. Every decision she made, every successful negotiation, consolidated her reputation in the corporate world. She was no longer the secretary who waited for approval, she was a recognized leader, admired by colleagues, partners, and even competitors. The autonomy and respect she had earned were the result of years of dedication, but now they were finally seen and valued, clearly and unequivocally. Sophie began to participate in high-level strategic meetings, where her ideas influenced decisions that shaped the future of the company. Her voice was heard, respected, and her analyses were considered crucial. She realized that, finally, her talent had room to flourish without restrictions. Each victory reinforced that she didn't need Ethan, his fortune, or his status to prove her worth. Her strength came from her own effort, intelligence, and determination. At the same time, Sophie felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing that her choices had taken her to a whole new level. The recognition she received was not superficial, but real, built on concrete results and genuine respect. Nathan trusted her completely, and their partnership became increasingly strategic. The feeling of independence and power was new, but deeply gratifying, showing that talent combined with the right opportunity generates extraordinary results. Colleagues who had previously looked at her with curiosity now viewed her with admiration. Sophie had become a reference within the company, and her name was mentioned with respect at every meeting. Her rise was not only professional but symbolic, proof that dedication, competence, and integrity would not only survive challenges but flourish in environments that truly valued these qualities. As she consolidated her position, Sophie also began to inspire other team members to excel. Her firm, intelligent, and ethical stance served as a model, showing that true success and recognition come from skill, effort, and strategic vision, not from favors or underestimating others. She was now a figure who transformed environments and people, and her presence in the corporate world was becoming increasingly influential. Ethan, meanwhile, watched from afar, growing increasingly frustrated. He finally understood that the time and dedication Sophie had offered could not be replaced by money or status. The realization that she had found someone who genuinely valued her and put her in a position of prominence without manipulating her hit him painfully. Each of Sophie's moves reinforced the difference between those who recognized talent and those who just hoped to take advantage of it. Sophie felt a mixture of gratitude and quiet power. Gratitude for having found Nathan, who saw her value, and power in knowing that, finally, her career was in her own hands. Each achievement reinforced that she didn't need Ethan's approval, nor the fortune he represented. She discovered that true wealth was not in money, but in respect, in the freedom to decide, and in the genuine recognition of those who really matter. As she consolidated her position, Sophie also learned to celebrate her own achievements. She no longer sought external validation, as the respect and trust she had earned from Nathan and his team were enough. Each victory was a reminder that she had overcome obstacles, injustices, and contempt, transforming pain and frustration into strength, leadership, and concrete results. And looking at everything she had built, Sophie felt that her future was in her own hands. She didn't need her former boss, her fortune, or external approval. Her rise was not only professional but symbolic, proof that strength, talent, and dignity overcome any obstacle. And as she reflected on her journey, she knew that challenges would still arise, but now she was ready to face them with confidence and determination. Ethan finally understood, too late, what he had lost. Money, status, and influence could never replace the value of loyalty, respect, and true partnership. Every move Sophie made, every achievement alongside Nathan, was silent proof that he had underestimated someone who had always been by his side. The emptiness he felt could not be filled with million-dollar offers. The opportunity to have someone so dedicated and intelligent would never come again. Sophie, for her part, followed her path with confidence and determination. Each step reflected not only professional growth, but also emotional maturity. She understood that her value was non-negotiable and that true recognition came from those who knew how to see her as a whole person. Nathan remained by her side, offering partnership, respect, and the chance to build something greater than any material wealth. It was the perfect combination of support, love, and real opportunities. While Ethan dealt with regret, Sophie consolidated her new life. She participated in strategic meetings, led teams, and made decisions that shaped the future of companies and people. Each successful outcome reinforced her autonomy and the fact that she didn't need to depend on anyone who didn't value her. Nathan was more than an employer. He was someone who saw her talent, appreciated her vision, and shared her ambition to turn dreams into reality. Sophie also reflected on everything she had been through. Every humiliation, every devaluation, every moment of frustration with Ethan served to strengthen her determination. She realized that pain was not just an obstacle, but a learning tool. Each challenge she faced prepared her for what was to come, making her resilient, strategic, and capable of making decisions that would change her life and the lives of others around her. The recognition Sophie received was not only external, but internal. She knew her worth, her competence, and the power of her own voice. Nathan trusted her as a partner, and that transformed each project into a space for mutual growth. The feeling of freedom, of being respected and valued, was intense and invigorating. Each victory reinforced the certainty that dignity, talent, and courage are strengths that no amount of money can replace. Ethan, isolated in his own frustration, began to realize that his obsession with control and status had blinded him to what really mattered. Love, loyalty, and true partnership cannot be bought, and Sophie was living proof of that. He had all the financial power in the world, but none of it could rebuild the lost respect or the bond of trust he had ignored for so long. The lesson was bitter and definitive, and regret would accompany him for a long time. As Sophie moved forward, Nathan remained by her side, supporting, encouraging, and celebrating each achievement. They formed a powerful team, united not only by professional interests, but by respect, trust, and genuine affection. The future seemed limitless, full of opportunities they could explore together. Sophie understood that she had finally found someone who valued her completely, without conditions or manipulation. Sophie's life now reflected balance, success, and fulfillment. She had transformed past frustrations into motivation, injustices into learning experiences, and rejection into personal strength. Each step was guided by her own vision, and each achievement reinforced that dignity and courage are more valuable than any fortune. Nathan was her partner, her ally, and the combination of the two made everything possible. And as she looked at her new path, Sophie felt a peace she had never experienced before. Her past with Ethan became just a memory, a lesson in recognizing value, trusting herself, and never compromising her dignity. She was ready for new opportunities, new achievements, and a fulfilling life alongside Nathan. And as she moved forward with confidence, she knew that every choice made with integrity and courage would always bring rewards. Finally, Sophie had found her true place in the world. Sophie's lessons show us something simple but powerful: dignity, loyalty, and courage are worth more than any fortune. Have you ever allowed yourself to value yourself above all else? Are you allowing other people to recognize your true worth, or do you still depend on the approval of those who don't see your potential? If this story made you reflect, share in the comments how you would react in her place. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss exciting stories like this one, full of secrets, twists, and lessons that can change your life.